Imagine a fully fledged FIA-sanctioned World Championship motor race taking place inside a building. Not a go-kart track, but a circuit where some of the top names in motorsport compete. This is the story of the London XL Formula E circuit and why we'll never see it again. Right in the heart of London's historic Royal Docklands sits an anomaly. Normally, the XL Convention Centre hosts events like the London Comic Con, Pokemon's European Championships, or one of its many businessy sounding expos, but every summer for the last few years, one of the convention halls and many of the access roads surrounding the building get transformed into a racetrack that snakes into and out of the building, the world's first and only indoor-outdoor racetrack, and maybe the last. Formula E's history in London for some time was a troubled one. While the XL had supposedly already put in their proposal to host the first London E-Prix, the finale of the first two seasons were hosted at a circuit at Battersea Park in 2015 and 2016. This was a somewhat traditional track for this era of Formula E, although since it used the park's paths rather than public roads, it was on the narrower and bumpier side, which sparked complaints from the drivers. A bump in turn 1 caused Jerome D'Ambrosio's suspension to break in preparation for the first race, which meant that they had to move the barrier to exclude the bump from the track for Saturday's race, narrowing the track further, and then fix the surface overnight for race 2. There was also pushback from the locals due to the event taking place in a Grade 2 listed park. Many felt that it was inappropriate to host an event like this at the park. After 2 runnings of the event, Formula E left Battersea Park and London altogether. After years of rumours, it was announced in 2019 that Formula E would return to London at a new indoor-outdoor track at the XL Centre, but this also initially faced trouble. During the global pandemic in 2020, the UK's National Health Service turned the XL into the first of their temporary Nightingale hospitals to increase the amount of patients they could see. This of course would prevent the race from going ahead in its first year. Despite all of this, 7 years after the first running could have happened, Formula E finally arrived at the XL Centre in 2021, and this is the track that was cooked up. The pit lane and first few corners were inside the convention centre hall, in front of the grandstands, which were inside. The track would then exit the hall and wrap around to the front of the building, where the cars would go down an access ramp and into a chicane below the main entrance. They would then make a right turn at the train station and go into a triple hairpin complex in the area that would normally be the entrance to the XL's car park. They'd then follow the train lines down to the back of the building where the attack mode activation point would be, on the outside of a hairpin after a heavy braking zone. After a few more corners, the cars would drive up another access road ramp and turn right into the convention hall again. The triple hairpin section would prove to be a controversial point of the track, causing a number of incidents, and would be changed to a bus stop style chicane for 2022. The last part of the track before re-entering the convention hall would also be changed in 2023 due to the XL's expansion project. A new track layout had to be laid through the construction site at the time, which would then become the second indoor portion of the track. The indoor-outdoor nature of the track was truly unique. The first thing that's different here that you don't think about is the pre-grid procedure. Instead of a full formation lap, in Formula E they do a small burnout to get to their grid spot from a few spots back. And a problem that occurred at the XL track is that the smoke from the burnouts would linger in place instead of dispersing in the air in the wind at any other racetrack. This meant that they had to hold the cars for a longer period between the burnout and the lights, kind of defeating the point of the burnout to get heat into the tyres in the first place, and even then they'd often be starting the race with a decent amount of smoke over the grid. Rain was something that would obviously be rather different at this track, and in 2023, during race 2, it happened. Unfortunately, the race was affected by a couple of red flags due to the intensity of the rain outside, but we were able to see the amusing scenario of a racetrack having 4 corners be completely dry inside, while the rest of the track was in an undrivable condition. It was probably one of the more comfortable red flags that the teams and drivers have experienced as well, considering they were all undercover in the pit lane, and that goes for the fans in the grandstands too. The fan experience is where the event truly shined and provided something completely different to other racing events. I love going to normal racetracks, and I'll happily rack up my 10,000 steps and then some exploring the whole venue, no matter the weather, but there was something really brilliant about having a racetrack that was accessible entirely by public transport, where I didn't really have to worry about clothing for the typical all-seasons UK weather, and I could just wear my casual trainers instead of walking boots. Not only were the grandstands inside, which kept you away from either the heat or the rain, but so was the fan village. This area utilized the convention hall opposite the one that was being used for the racetrack. The contents of the fan village may not have been very different to other Formula E events, but being indoors changed the vibe completely from similar fan zones I've been to at other racetracks. It felt like you were in a Formula E version of a Comic-Con, but with more room to breathe. Attractions like the sim racing booth and other gaming booths must have been more comfortable here than at other venues, and there were lots of beanbags spread out in front of the big screens for people to chill and watch whatever's going on in the other hall. The coolest thing they had, in 2023 only, was an autocross setup from Motorsport UK. You could queue up and get driven around in the passenger seat of one of their electric Fiat 500s. It's only a small, low-speed circuit, of course, but I've never seen a fan activation of this kind at any racetrack before, let alone inside. This comfortable vibe would then change completely for the live music performances if you went over to the full stage setup at one end of the fan village. The headline music act of the day would be performing during the lengthy period between qualifying and the race each day. These headliners included acts like Craig David, Tiny Temper, and Pixie Lott. Ella Henderson had a group of die-hard fans at the front of the stage for her performance, and they'd perhaps come more for her than the race, I'm guessing. And also Rizzlekicks bringing the dance troupe up on stage who had performed earlier in the day once they saw them dancing in the crowd was one of the hype moments of the 2025 weekend, and that wasn't even part of the racing. AJ Tracy will headline the final race this coming weekend. This concert vibe extended to the pre-race. Some people criticize Formula E's use of music and sound effects on the TV broadcast as well, and I suppose it's not really pure motorsport by any definition, but the build-up and hype to the race start at this event has more hype and anticipation than any other racing event I've been to. The day's music headliner would do a short performance above the pit garages while the cars are on the grid, and even after this they'd still make as much use of the sound and lighting systems they had installed for the event. Loud music, lots of flashing lights, perhaps too much for some, but the anticipation is just far better than any other race I've been to, a different environment completely. It must have been unique for the drivers too, because they're sat on the grid in their cars, so they just have to sit there in their full gear, in their tight cockpit, and listening to an entire concert going on around them and all the strobe lights while they're trying to get in the zone for the race. Unfortunately, the 2026 race will be the final race held at the ExCeL, and it's not because of any particular issues with the track or event. For the 2026-7 season, Formula E moves to its new Gen 4 car. This car promises a huge upgrade in power and downforce and is said to be able to do comparable lap times to a Formula 2 car. This means that the ExCeL track, already one of the shortest and narrowest circuits on a calendar which has already been branching out into permanent racetracks for many seasons now, is simply going to be too small for the cars. So despite the event being super popular amongst fans with a packed grandstand every single time it races there, and the venue seeming so keen to keep it going even when their own expansion projects meant that the track had to be redesigned, this era of the London E-Prix will come to a close. The London E-Prix will be held at Brands Hatch in 2027, which won't even be the first time that an event at Brands Hatch has been referred to as a London race. They'll be racing on the full Grand Prix course. As much as I'll be sad to see the ExCeL go, this should be a fantastic event in its own right. The Gen 4 Formula E cars should be the fastest cars to race around the Grand Prix loop since DTM last came to Brands Hatch with their Class 1 cars in 2019. But whether it's rain or shine, and no matter how cool the cars look through the high-speed corners, I'm always going to think back to the time we were sat under a roof watching them. If you want to see a bit more of what the ExCeL was like, I have IRL stream recordings from 2024, 2025 and 2026, where I walk around the entire fan zone and grandstand area, and also a bit of a recap video from the 2022 race as well. Links in the description, and hopefully they're coming up on the end card as well. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about what the event was like, or share your own experiences if you went to any of them. Catch you later.
The crowd for the podium celebration versus the crowd for the football.